In business today, three things to know. First, Venezuela at the crossroads. Political and social upheaval challenge the world's energy markets. Then, hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. Congress targets the secret world of Swiss banking and accuses Credit Suisse of helping rich Americans avoid taxes. And help wanted for the nation's roads, an ambitious infrastructure plan by President Obama with the aim of creating jobs. But can the federal government really pull it off? Arise XChange starts now. Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew Schmertz. Anti-government protests in Venezuela have led to more than a dozen deaths and concern that the Latin America's largest oil producer is unraveling. The crisis in Venezuela comes amid staggering economic problems. Inflation is running at 56%. Key staples such as milk, flour, and soap are in short supply. Violence is out of control with a person murdered every 21 minutes. And the political atmosphere has turned toxic. The leftist president won election by the slimmest margin in the country's history. All of this follows the legacy of the late President Hugo Chavez. Venezuela's problems are now threatening economies in neighboring countries and the global oil market. Maria Conchita Alonso is a Grammy Award-winning singer and songwriter and now activist who grew up in Venezuela and joins us on the phone from Los Angeles. Maria, good afternoon. It's an honor to have you on this program and for you to provide your unique perspective. Can you tell us a little bit about the situation from what you're hearing on the ground in your home country that's happening now?
Yes. This has been a slowly invasion of Cuba in Venezuela. People in Venezuela got tired of having not only the communist Cuban control the country. They're the ones that give orders, but of course they're also tired of not having food. They can't find food. They can't find toilet papers, and Nicolas Maduro is an illegitimate president because he has like double nationality from Colombia if he wasn't born in Colombia, which we all believe he was.
So there's some concerns about his legitimacy, and you bring up a very interesting point. It was Chavez who got very close, obviously, to Cuba and instituted a lot of their policies. And the economy has pretty much collapsed. What is it like to live now in the country with the current economy?
Well, I don't live there, but I do have my father and a brother and family, and a lot of my friends do. So I talk to them most of it every day, and besides, watching and reading what's going on. And you see, it's the crime in Venezuela is huge. The crime percentage, and people just get killed by getting out of your house to go to the to school, to go to buy something. Just once you step out of your home, your life can be taken away. When you're waiting the red light, on the traffic, motorcycles come with guns and they can kill you. So they all got tired about it for this, and they decided that we're going to go out because we prefer to die in the battlefield, because that's what now is Venezuela. All of whole Venezuela is a war zone, and they said they prefer to die there than just going out of their home to do their whereabouts.
Do you think that the international reaction here has been rather tepid when you compare it to, say, the Ukraine? The Venezuela story has, in many cases, been pushed off the front page. What do you want to see more from the United States and from their Latin American neighbors?
You see, the United States have to understand, if they don't already, but are making believe like they don't, that this is, the Russians are next door. The Iranians are next door, and the Cubans, of course. What I mean here is that they have naval bases in Venezuela, and now Russia is saying that they're going to open one there too. But I was told that already is inside Venezuela. What is their target? The target is to be next door to the United States, to control and do whatever they want to do because of the hatred to this country.
So do you want to see what kind of aggressive response do you want to see from the United States? I mean, are we at the point where they need to put some troops on the ground?
I believe so. Many people don't. No, why should we? Why should you? Not only for Venezuela, as I just said, but for the whole continent. And this is where they want to end up with United States. The students are on the streets, and now not only the students, but all sorts of different ages. They're out and they're being killed. They're being killed. The SUVs and are being run over them. They've been shot with rubber bullets also. There have been, I think 15 deaths. A lot of them have disappeared. A couple of students have been raped with rifles. They're hit like you can't, there's no tomorrow.
And we have to remember that this is a major oil producer, that if the oil gets cut off from this country, it's going to have significant ramifications.
It's yes, and that's why I also think this is the time to really do something about it. It's very complicated because it's now with Obama in power, they want to make dialogues and shake hands and everything, but you have to understand that with communists and totalitarian regimes and dictatorship regimes, you can't have a dialogue. They don't listen, they don't understand what that means, they don't know what respect is. And here with them, you just have to say, okay, listen, either you get out of the country, Nicolas Maduro, the Cubans get out of Venezuela. The Cubans are infiltrated with the National Guards.
Okay, Maria, we're gonna have to wrap it up there, but I want to thank you very much for your unique insight into this problem. We'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
And turning to the domestic markets, a surprising and upbeat housing report helped stocks early in the day Wednesday. They eventually finished just modestly up in choppy trading. New home sales rose 9.6% in January to a 5-year high, according to the U.S. Commerce Department. The annual rate now comes in at 480,000, 80,000 better than forecasted. However, many analysts are questioning the number since most of the reports before this one were far weaker, and mortgage applications fell to a 20-year low, suggesting weaker housing numbers maybe in the spring. Let's take a look at the closing numbers on Wall Street. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 21.45 to 16,201. The S&P 500 squeaking out a slight gain to 18.45. The Nasdaq briefly hit a 14-year high, closing at 42.92. Think about this. It's been a decade and a half since the Nasdaq had its high. Now, taking a look at stocks we're watching, Hewlett-Packard Security, $32.4 million cybersecurity contract today from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security to provide software security product licenses for 33 federal civilian government agencies. The new deal will help the agencies prevent network and system vulnerabilities. Hewlett-Packard up a couple cents to $29.90. Struggling electronics manufacturer Sony says it's slashing another 1,000 jobs in the United States as part of its restructuring efforts to cut costs. The company said it would close 20 of its 31 Sony retail stores. Sony closing up 9 cents to $17.37. And the massive data breach at Target took its toll on company quarterly profits, according to analysts. Target says it earned $520 million, or 81 cents a share, for the 3 months ending February 1st. That compares with a profit of $961 million, or $1.47 a share, a year earlier. Revenue fell to $21.5 billion from $22.7 billion. Target closing up $398 to $60.49. And breaking news from Tesla after the bell. The company says it's offering $1.6 billion in convertible senior notes in an underwritten registered public offering. Tesla closing up 5 points to 253. And taking a look at commodities. Gold down 14.20 to 13.28. Oil up 67 cents to 102.50. Jim Awad from Plimsoll Market Capital is here back on XChange to talk about the markets and a little bit of sort of the political intrigue going on in Latin America and Ukraine I'll ask you about. Let me start asking you about Venezuela. At what point does this start really impacting the energy markets if it hasn't already done so?
I don't think it's going to be significant because no matter who rules Venezuela, oil is a national resource, and they're going to look to exploit that and keep the production facilities going and the exports going. So the only thing that would matter in the short term to the oil markets would be a disruption. And I think any disruption would be minor. And look at what went on in Iraq during that war, even in Syria today.
They keep pumping the oil.
They keep pumping
because
the oil.
That's their sort of bread and
So
butter.
there are long-term strategic implications to what happens in Venezuela, but it's not going to affect the financial markets this year.
And we haven't seen much of an impact either from the crisis going on in the Ukraine as far as the U.S. equity markets.
Right. Again, Ukraine is a longer-term strategic issue in the East versus the West, but it doesn't control any natural resources. It's not important economically. You could make the case that the oil pipelines from Russia to Western Europe go through Ukraine, but then again, there are revenues attached to that.
Again, Russia needs to have that oil pumped.
Right. Nobody's going to sabotage that oil. So whatever goes on in Ukraine will not affect the stock markets unless you had some sort of an all-out war.
Okay, so let's turn to the domestic news today. Home sales up better than 9% in January, but I've been watching analysts all day say that these numbers are relatively bogus.
Yeah, it was better than expected, but it's a small sample, subject to revision, and totally different from everything else that we've been getting. So it on the margin was a little bit of help to the markets today, but nobody is really thinking it's real and or sustainable.
And so far, the markets are probably discounting that number. What's more troubling, though, is the mortgage application number. No one is applying for mortgages, which means no one is out there shopping for homes.
Well, the housing market so far has been dominated by investor buying of second homes, and that's really what supported that market. And of course, now investors are apparently starting to look at new homes to buy them to rent. So that will support housing, but you do have to say the increase in prices and the increase in mortgage rates and the lack of inventory is all likely to keep housing from being as strong this year to the economy as it was last year.
And as far as U.S. equities, you think the January correction is now over?
I think this year is going to be a frustrating year. I think it's not going to go up or down the markets from current levels. The economy is growing, profits are growing. There are not a lot of investment alternatives to equities. Valuations are not terrible. On the other hand, stocks are up a lot, and they're not a bargain. That's right. They are subjected to any bad news in the credit markets as interest rates normalize. So I think this year will be a standoff where both the extreme bulls and the extreme bears will be frustrated.
So then where do you put your money? Because you can't buy bonds because they're not paying anything. And if U.S. equities are going to just trade in the range, and you shouldn't be buying Bitcoins right now.
No, certainly not Bitcoins.
So where do you invest?
Well, I think you do buy the large cap multinationals with global exposure, 3 or 4% dividends. They can grow 5 or 6% in earnings this year. So if you get a 7 or 8% total return, I think that makes sense. What I would not own are leveraged stocks, low quality stocks.
What about small cap, Russell 2000?
Well, it's defying gravity. It's defying gravity, and they're expensive. Absolutely, they're expensive relative to the rest of the stock market. They've got tremendous momentum. You never bet against that momentum, but if it breaks, it's going to break hard.
And it's going to be hard. All right, Jim Awad, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And coming up, the U.S. Congress hammers one of the world's largest banks for allegedly helping the rich avoid taxes. You're watching Rise Exchange. Because we live in a global, interconnected world, business news no longer stops when the markets close on Wall Street. And what we've discovered over the past few years of the financial crisis is that events and news that happen even in the smallest countries impact the United States and the world at large. As we bring together experts and analysts and thought leaders and CEOs and companies across many industries to not only provide the macroeconomic view, but news everyday people can use. Welcome back to Exchange. The Swiss banking giant Credit Suisse is accused of helping wealthy American clients hide billions in assets using cloak and dagger tactics. According to a Senate investigation, the bank opened a special Zurich airport branch so customers could fly in to meet their private bankers. VIPs would use a secret elevator operated by remote control to be whisked to banking suites. And bankers avoided sending account statements and leaving paper trails. On Wednesday, Credit Suisse's CEO, Brady Dugan, testified at a Senate hearing, putting the blame on a small group of bankers.
The investigation evidence showed that these people went to great lengths to disguise their bad conduct from the bank. We have presented the subcommittee with the unvarnished results of our internal investigation. Credit Suisse's management team regrets very deeply that despite the industry-leading compliance measures we put in place, we had some Swiss-based private bankers who appear to have violated U.S. law.
According to the Senate report, Credit Suisse held more than 22,000 accounts for U.S. customers with assets valued between $10 and $12 billion, and up to 95% of the accounts were not reporting for tax purposes to the IRS. To talk more about this is Mark Matthews from the tax firm Chaplin and Drysdale. Matthews has worked with clients to resolve these type of tax issues. He joins us from Washington, D.C. Mark, thank you for stopping by today.
Oh, good afternoon.
Let me ask you something that the CEO, Brady Dugan of Credit Suisse, said to Congress, that this was the result of basically rogue bankers. Do you believe him?
Well, sure. I think what you've seen, the important thing to understand is that you have a variety of behaviors in these banks. We have some of the larger banks, and they've been named publicly, like Credit Suisse and UBS, tended to have more of what you might call a U.S. program. In other words, there was a little bit more evidence of concerted effort to go about and obtain U.S. customers, traveling to the United States, looking at first-class airfare lounges, polo matches, trying to get customers. But there are another 106 banks, Swiss banks, who have come forward who may have developed these accounts more by happenstance or over the years. So you're going to see a wide variety of behaviors.
All right, let me ask you something. John McCain, Senator McCain from Arizona, said that this reads like a spy novel. When you were talking to some of your clients, what were some of the tactics here that the banks would go to, as far as the lengths they would go to try to pull this off?
Well, some of the clients were obviously cooperating with the banks, and it came from the most simple kind of devices called the mail hold, where there was an agreement that no statements or evidence would be sent to the United States, and they would avoid phone calls and emails, that kind of thing. One of the most famous examples was one of the UBS bankers saying he would literally bring the assets back into the United States in the form of diamonds stuffed in toothpaste tubes that would help him get it through customs. But there have been banks, and again, the Swiss are getting hit very hard. They had a program, but there are other areas of the world too. But they literally would have garage bays where you could drive in with your car, have open your suitcase of currency, and have it counted right there. So they were clearly catering to some high net worth clients.
Mark, do you think that the United States government let this go on for too long? It's certainly not new. It must have been going on for decades. And now to become so aggressive over this, what kind of pushed them to take action over the last few years?
Well, the United States has known about this for decades. You're exactly right. And we've represented clients who literally had money in accounts inherited were abroad 50, 60 years ago. There were some very difficult issues legally investigating these cases. The tax havens, even if they had treaties, the mechanisms didn't work. What really broke the back of this was this Birkenfeld banker from UBS who came forward. He gave the government the evidence that allowed them to form the basis for a John Doe summons, and there was essentially a shootout in a Miami courtroom, and UBS blinked and started giving these documents. Once the government started getting those documents, the dominoes started falling. And the other interesting thing here is that the United States was alone for many years and sort of, screaming about this. What's changed, I think, is that other governments, too, worried about their own economies and their need for their revenues, we've seen them join the United States in recent years, OECD, G20, at those kind of levels, saying we want to do something collectively to help all countries to get a hold of these tax revenues.
Mark, Switzerland, of course, has been known for its secrecy in banking laws. It is not the only country. So what other areas are the U.S. government involved in trying to track down some of this money?
Well, we know they have investigations in the Middle East. We know they have investigations in Central America and in the Far East. Basically, anyone can go on the internet, do some search engines, look for words like tax havens, and you can bet that top 20 list of tax havens, there is probably Justice Department and IRS investigative activity directed at those jurisdictions.
Okay, Mark Matthews from the tax firm Chaplin and Drysdale. Fascinating story. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Time now for looking at our business ticker. More companies are lining up against a proposed law in Arizona that would allow businesses to refuse service to gay people based on, quote, religious grounds. Some of the companies protesting the bill. Salesforce.com, whose CEO tweeted late today that if it passes, quote, his company will never hold another event in Arizona. The CEO of American Airlines, Doug Parker, says this bill would jeopardize all that's been accomplished. And Delta Airlines released a statement saying that the law would, quote, harm many people and lead to job losses. Other major companies opposing the bill: Apple, which is building a factory in the state; AT&T, and also, of course, the NFL has spoken out against it, plan to host the Super Bowl next year in Arizona. Governor Jan Brewer has until the end of the week to either sign the bill or veto it. She's facing mounting pressure. Both Republican senators from Arizona and former Republican presidential nominee Mitt Romney are urging her to veto it. General Motors has expanded its recall to more than 1.5 million cars in North America. This comes after the automaker linked more deaths to its faulty ignition switch problem. The number of fatalities tied to the defect has now increased from 16 to 13, and the number of crashes from 22 to 31. Models added in the recall are the Saturn Ion, years 2003 to 2007, as well as the Chevy HHR, the Pontiac Solstice, and the Saturn Sky, model years 2006 to 2007. These are in addition to the recall in the U.S. of nearly 620,000 Chevrolet Cobalts from 2005 through 2007, model years 2007 for the Pontiac G5S. Delta is changing course on its frequent flyer program. The airline will be the first major carrier to tie frequent flyer points to how much you pay, not how far you fly. The change will take effect next year. JetBlue and Southwest Airlines have already tied frequent flyer miles earned to the amount spent on a ticket. Other major airlines are expected to follow suit. And one very lucky couple from California has uncovered a literal pot of gold. While walking their dog across their property, the couple discovered a partially buried can jutting out of the ground, which contained gold coins, and not just a few. In total, the buried treasure included 1,400 rare U.S. gold coins with a face value of $28,000 and a market value of $10 million. Some of the coins are reported to be worth more than $1 million each. Everybody run out to your backyard now. Ahead, commit fraud? Become a college professor. Our favorite person of the day is next here on Arise Exchange.
The great thing about Arise Entertainment 360 is that we cover the 360 of entertainment, food, fashion, lifestyle, culture. We're able to cover it all. And the thing I love most about the show is we're able to do a stunning combination of high and low. So we can talk about Rihanna on the red carpet, but we can also speak about high art with people like Sanford Biggers and Hank Willis. We actually spend quality time with our guests and we really get to know them. It's really intriguing because we get a 360 look at our guests.
Time now for our favorite person of the day, when we pick one person who grabbed our attention and not for the right reasons. Today, that person is the former Goldman Sachs banker and convicted fraudster, Fabrice Tour, who has found a new job teaching honors economics at the University of Chicago. The 34-year-old has so far been the only person to be found guilty of committing fraud related to the financial crisis. In August, he was convicted of 6 charges of fraud for perpetrating a $1 billion scheme to deceive buyers of mortgage-backed securities. To pull that off, well, he must be pretty good with numbers and economics, you figure. So, all the more reason for a university to hire him to teach it. One student anonymously commented on the school newspaper website, "When has the university economics department ever been worried about the rule of law?" Tour will teach the 3-credit class this spring, providing he's not in jail. Now, Tour may also be doing it to meet co-eds. He used to sign emails to his girlfriend, Fabulous Fab. And so Fabrice Tour is our favorite person of the day. Coming up next, President Obama is still trying to dig up jobs. We'll look at his latest plan. You're watching Arise Exchange.
Arise serves underserved communities by bringing them news, information, sports, and entertainment from places that are becoming part of the world economy, that are becoming a part of the world voice, and decisions that are affecting things in the world that people care about. They care about the economy. They care about safety and security. And if you come to Arise and you watch our broadcast, these are the things we're going to bring to you every day, 24 hours a day.
The White House ramping up its effort to create more jobs in the U.S. Earlier this week, President Barack Obama announced a new $140 million plan to develop 2 manufacturing institutes in Chicago and Detroit aimed at developing jobs in the area. And today, the president unveiled his new $302 billion infrastructure plan in Minnesota that he says will also open the door for new job opportunities. Sound good? But will it work? Let's ask Development Specialist President and CEO Bill Brandt. Bill, welcome back to Arise Exchange.
Always a pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for welcoming me on the program.
Well, and thank you for your help today. So give us an overview of what the president here has tried to do, especially focusing on Detroit and Chicago.
You know, I think you saw it in the State of the Union message and before that, where he said, look, I've got a pen and I've got a phone. I think when you look at yesterday's or today's announcement about the $300 billion, I should say, for roads, I suspect he's going to have a hard time moving that through Congress, and he knows it. And I think he said in previous interviews that he'd love to do something along the lines that Lyndon Johnson did, where he could get a major, like a war on poverty, a major effort in the cities to restructure the cities and to bring jobs in. But I think he knows, as well as most Americans know, that that isn't going to happen with this Congress, and it's not likely going to happen in the balance of his presidency. So what he can do is there are a variety of these sort of embryonic, incubator programs that he can put in various cities where he thinks he'll find a sympathetic ear and people who already have had some structure put together to run with it. In the case of Chicago, of course, Rahm Emanuel's talked about his infrastructure bank. There is a similar effort underway in Michigan. So these fall on receptive structures that can run with it and make him look good. But I think, as President Clinton used to say in some last part of his term, there's a little bit of small ball going on here because that's all you can get done.
And that's all that he can get done. But also, does he have the money to do it? Because regarding his plan for the manufacturing institutes, he's a little bit short in coming up with cash, isn't he?
I think he is a little bit short, but remember that in Chicago, for example, they've just undertaken a new biotech hub. They have a real good incubator for venture capital, and so there's a lot of money floating around that would love to partner up in these private-public partnerships and help this go. And I think getting the president behind this will probably draw some attention to it. He may not have the entire funding as he starts, but I think he can attract a lot of players who like the idea, like it's in Chicago or like it's in Detroit for the Michigan players.
How effective?
But he said when he talked about this.
Bill, let me ask you this, though. How effective is this to create jobs today and this year? Because this sounds like a long-term strategy when these cities need jobs today.
I couldn't disagree. I mean, as the president said, when Germany has 60 of these and now we've got 4, they are incubators, and they are incubators in every sense of the word. They're to see if they can jumpstart the manufacturing processes in these historically manufacturing-centered towns. But you're right. They are not going to create jobs tomorrow. It is just what he can do with that pen and a phone that doesn't require congressional approval.
And you bring that up a very interesting point, because he can do a lot with his pen and his phone, but what the president still can't do, of course, is sign the checks. That is always in the power of Congress, and they're probably going to stand in the way of this president. When you talk about manufacturing, then, is it too late? Has the ship simply sailed, or are we starting to bring back manufacturing jobs to these cities?
Well, there's a divergent 2-point there. I mean, we are starting to bring back manufacturing jobs on the onshoring program because the price of labor in China, even the price of labor on a unit basis in Malaysia, is going up. And with the shipping costs, the U.S. looks good. On the other hand, you and I both know that as much as the president would love to take credit for that, that is the effect of the global economics that he's just a bystander to, like the rest of it. America is a more attractive place to do manufacturing. It would be wonderful if these old cities got their manufacturing base back. But again, manufacturing in the States in the last couple of decades has tended to go towards the Sun Belt for a lot of price and labor issues.
And union reasons as well. All right, Bill Brandt, appreciate it. Next time we'll see you here in the studio, okay? Thank you.
I look forward to it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Tomorrow on Exchange, concert ticket sales are sizzling in the U.S., and that is sweet music for promoters like Live Nation, which are leading the pack. Top executive Jason Stone stops by to tell us about the recipe for their success. Taking a look at the markets one last time. Across the board, green arrows, but a modest day up. I'm Andrew Schmertz. Thanks for watching Arise Exchange.